So, Tsuburaya Productions did more this past weekend than reveal the design for Shin Slenderman. Sorry, I mean Shin Ultraman. They had a bunch of other announcements for upcoming projects, some of which did catch my eye, particularly KAIJU Decode. Now, what the heck is KAIJU Decode? That's a very good question, because at the moment, we really don't know. I looked around, but there's very little info on this at the moment. Possibly because it's one of those announcements that just kind of snuck in alongside all the stuff like Ultraman and the spin-off for SSSS Gridman and whatnot. So KAIJU Decode, being something new and unfamiliar and not as popular, therefore, kind of slipped in under the radar. But I am intrigued, so I've been looking around. The official website is right behind me. It has been translated into English, and here is what we know so far based on what it says and what it shows, neither of which amounts to a whole lot at this point. The information we do have says the following. It's a collaboration between Tsuburaya Productions and Toei Animation. It's going to be CG rather than a traditional looking 2D animation. It's going to involve kaiju somehow. It's described as a Girls' End monster plot. And it's coming soon. At this point, that is literally all the information we have available. And based on that, it could mean anything. The only other thing I've been able to find is on Sci-Fi Japan, wherein one of the people involved said that they're doing this series because they've noticed, as I'm sure many people have, and even I've made a video on this in the past, the lack of kaiju in anime and manga. They seem to be largely absent for some reason. I've already given my thoughts on why I think that is, and you can follow the links to see that video, though since I have you here, I will make one quick addendum to that. I mistakenly said that, as far as I was able to tell, the first giant robot in Japanese pop culture was Mogera from the Mysterians, a live-action work, and that was used then to deconstruct the idea put forth by other commentators that the reason giant robots are more prevalent in anime and manga than giant monsters is because giant monsters are considered exclusively live action, whereas giant robots are considered more for the animated medium, if you will. That was a mistake. Mogera was an early example, but he was not the first. So I have been meaning to correct that for a while now. I may as well take the opportunity to do exactly that. But other than that, most of my argument still stands, because Mogera is still an example of how giant robots have existed in live action and in comics and animation for a long time. And, well, just watch the video to see the rest of the argument. But keep that one addendum in mind. With that said, back on topic. So it has been coming up more and more as of late that kaiju are mysteriously absent from anime and manga. They used to be a bit more prevalent as opponents for giant robots in what are largely considered mecha anime, but even then they were never really all that focused upon. They were just sort of cannon fodder. And the most recent popular examples would be things like the Titans from Attack on Titan, which, again, not exactly the most interesting kaiju out there, or the Godzilla anime trilogy, which the less said about that, the better. Honestly, the best examples of kaiju manga I've been able to find at this point are more accurately described as slice-of-life stories. Those being series like Monster Tamer Girls or Kaiju Girl Caramelize, or Caramelise. I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce that second one. But either way, both kaiju stories, both actually pretty good, but not exactly what you would expect from the kaiju genre most of the time. You usually expect kaiju to be a bit more sci-fi action-oriented. These are more grounded, slice-of-life comedy stories. Doesn't appear to be the case with KAIJU Decode. You look at the teaser images, they're showing something that looks a bit more intense, a bit more action-packed. But again, we don't really know anything beyond that. Both images feature this thing that looks like something between an egg and a cocoon, but we don't really know what hatched from it. And only one image features this girl, but we don't know what her role is or even her name. What I'm sure will also stick out to people is the fact that this will be a CG anime, meaning a more three-dimensional computer-generated look as opposed to a two-dimensional hand-drawn look. Even though anime these days isn't hand-drawn, that's still the style it tries to maintain for the most part, as opposed to a three-dimensional look, so hand-drawn is still used as the shorthand term. It's going for that, and really that could go either way. On the one hand, there are some CG anime that look really good, like Land of the Lustrous. That's a series that really makes good use of that format. On the other hand, though, you can get stuff like the recent Berserk films, which are infamously bad looking. So it really seems to depend on how good the studio is. Things like the Netflix anime series, Knights of Sidonia, the Godzilla anime and whatnot, they tend to fall somewhere in between, where sometimes they look good, sometimes they look bad, oftentimes within the same episode or film, and it's just variable whether or not you're going to get something that looks right, because what the Japanese animation industry has to work with isn't quite the same as what the American animation industry has to work with, including technology and money, resources, things like that. The mission statement, if you will, for this series does say they're aiming for high quality animation. So I think the intention is to make the best possible looking thing they can. Whether or not they'll be able to do it, we will see. I'm hoping they can do it, because I don't want this series to fail. I want there to be more kaiju in anime. But they're choosing to go with something that traditionally isn't always that well received, so it's a risk, but it's a risk that could pay off if it's done well. Let us not forget, of course, SSSS Gridman made heavy use of 3D animation in conjunction with 2D animation, and every clip I've seen from it, I haven't gotten a chance to see the full series yet, I am going to at some point, trust me, but every clip I've seen in which that's used, it looks really good, and that's another Tsuburaya production. So hopefully that sort of attention and that sort of animation is what we will see in KAIJU Decode. Beyond that, KAIJU Decode is a gigantic question mark amongst all the other announcements Tsuburaya Productions has made. And that certainly has me intrigued. As curious as I am about how these other more familiar works turn out, something brand new like this has me even more curious. Because, well, I don't want to sound like I'm the sort of person who says entertainment is too full of remakes and not enough original content, but original content does need to get attention. So I'll be keeping my eyes open on this. I have no idea when we'll see the first teasers of anything or what it'll look like, but I've got my eyes open, and as soon as I know something, you guys will know something. Until such time as we meet again, this is the OmniViewer signing off. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, as well as subscribe to the channel for more content of a similar nature. Also, check the description for links to our Twitter, DeviantArt, and Patreon pages, as well as the Amazon link for the novel Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, penned by yours truly. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.